Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on improving and aligning the artwork management process. My name is Peter Breen. I'm editor-in-chief of Consumer Goods Technology Magazine and the consumergoods.com website, and I will serve as your moderator today. Now, we're going to get started in just about a minute or two, but while we wait for a couple of more people to sign on, I need to cover a couple of housekeeping items. First off, I'm obligated to say that the materials in this webcast have been reviewed by our editorial staff, but the views of the speaker and their organizations do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Consumer Goods Technology or its publisher, Ensemble IQ. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is a disclaimer that the legal department requires us to make before every single webinar. It has absolutely no reflection whatsoever on our personal opinion of the great speakers that we've got for you today and the terrific insights that they're going to be providing for you. Now, as time allows, we try to make these webinars as interactive as possible. So please feel free to ask questions throughout the hour using the Q&A function that you see on the left side of your screen down below the presenter headshots. If time allows, we'll field as many of these questions as we can at the end of the formal presentation. And if we don't have time to answer all of the questions, our sponsors at Siemens will try to follow up following today's session. Now, you can also use this section down here on the left if you have any technical questions, and our webinar producer, Whitney, will respond to you with the answers to those. The slides from the webinar will also be downloadable from that Event Resources Center down there in the same area. If you have any other kind of feedback, please feel free to use this section as well. Finally, if you want to review this webinar later on or share it with your colleagues, a replay will be available soon after the conclusion of the formal session this afternoon, and it's going to remain available for at least a few months for your listening pleasure, so you'll always be able to go back and refer to that. Okay, that does it for the housekeeping. Before I introduce our two speakers, I just wanted to take a minute to kind of set the stage for today's presentation. You know, we all know that we're living in a time of unprecedented change in the consumer goods industry. And its change is being driven largely by advances in digital technology. For CG companies, it's driven by the move to digital communication, to digital marketing, and to digital commerce. Today's environment for consumer goods is marked by a lot of different things. It's marked by increasing costs for resources, by compressed projection completion timeframes, by emerging but already vital digital delivery channels, and by dramatically expanded consumer demand for things like product quality, transparency, and social responsibility. These factors are making it even more critical for product manufacturers to develop more effective, more efficient, and faster processes for distributing brand artwork throughout both the creative and the technical communities. In this kind of environment, seamless integration and cross-functional alignment aren't just important for driving operational efficiency, they've become critical for future brand success. And one of these key areas is within the brand artwork process. So that's enough from me. Let me introduce our speakers and we'll get going with the presentation. Frank Brandau is Director of Consumer Products and Retail for Siemens Industry Software AG. He's responsible for interdepartmental cooperation within the company, including sales, services, and product development. He provides technical leadership on large, complex customer initiatives, offering architectural oversight, brand solution overview, and market value definitions based on his more than 12 years of experience working with prospects and customers in CPG and related domains, and his 20 years of experience with product lifecycle management solutions. Our other speaker is Stephen Kaufman. He is Chief Product Officer for Blue Software and an industry-recognized thought leader and visionary. The former Chief Technology Officer at Shock SGK, he brings both a unique vision and leadership skills to Blue that were honed over the course of 20 years in the label and artwork management and pre-media industries. His goal at Blue is to gain an ever-deepening understanding of future customer needs to help Blue maintain its role as a technology leader in the next generation of solutions. Those are our two speakers, and with that, I will turn things over to Frank.
Thank you very much, Peter. Welcome, everybody. Probably to give you a little bit of a background of not only what we do professionally in our life, but who we really are and where we come from, I would like to introduce myself a little bit deeper into my past. From the very beginning on, I really tried to educate and train both half of my brain. So I actually started in artwork. I did a lot of desktop publishing in my past. I worked at the print shop. I did marketing flyers and other material for various reasons, mainly to actually get a little bit of an income for studying. So what I did, which perfectly matches that kind of history, I studied physics. So in the end, I became a scientist. I was working in that field not for too long because I got a very, very great opportunity to join the domain of product lifecycle management. In product lifecycle management, I've worked with various customers over the time and have gained the position that I got responsible for really working on what we now call the artwork development solution. During that time, I got the great honor to actually meet Stephen in there as well. And handing over to Stephen, probably you introduce yourself a little bit as well.
Sure, Frank. Thank you. Yeah, it's my pleasure as well. I think my background, Frank, we started off in some of the same ways. I was actually a professional typesetter in Washington, D.C., which is something we don't really have anymore. It combined later with pre-media, but I'd say my career closely mapped that of the rise of the Apple platform, specifically the Macintosh. And I, after growing up for a while on it, became a trainer in Illustrator, Photoshop, some older applications like Freehand and others. And then when I joined Shock in the 90s, trained a lot of professional graphic artists on the tools, and then began to elevate that vision into a technology vision, and that's where I got into more of a technical and product role as I moved forward to my role here at Blue Software.
And I'm absolutely sure there's great opportunities for you to teach me a little bit about the latest updates and the latest and greatest in that artwork technology. But for today, I believe we have a fantastic opportunity really talking about how to connect those two pieces, so artwork and science, and bring that to one common picture. So if we check what the packaging requirements today really are, we really witnessed a dramatic change over the last few years. We got way more data and regulatory complexity. Speed to market accelerated like crazy, with customers really changing their minds due to social media going on. We have an increasing cost of recalls, an omni-channel impact of the data as well. If we really compare all of that to what we would like to bring in that industry, there's a huge opportunity for all of us to really make sure that we get a good grasp and combine the methodologies and organizational structures of science and bring that as an advantage really to the artwork domain. What do you think, Stephen?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think maybe of all these, the omni-channel impact is the one that stands out to me as something that's in some ways a new ingredient. Not to say we haven't always had multiple channels, because there have always been multiple channels in product branding and product advertising. But I think the speed with which those channels are changing, particularly social, mobile, and other e-commerce oriented platforms, the need to slice and dice and project different sets of data to different demographies and markets and regulatory environments has, I think, as you said earlier, Frank, accelerated the need for us to organize that data and get it right early in the life cycle.
I mean, if we really look how all of that works, there is kind of a lot of opportunity in here with all the impacts on artwork and how that comes together. So there's dramatic influences from everything going for regulation, for mandates, for sourcing. I mean, we have a lot of impact in this domain, and I'm trying to work around that one because I don't see the animation on that slide working. Oh, there
you go.
Perfect. Thank you. So that's a good ghost in the background making all that possible today. Thanks a lot. Stephen, what do you think about all of this? This looks really massive.
It's daunting. The small nutrition facts represents the update the FDA made in the U.S., but really this is happening in all the markets. And another thing we're seeing, I think if you go back 5 or 10 years, you'd see a couple of patterns where you had the FDA taking some leadership in regulatory change in the U.S., and many other companies, particularly in the same hemisphere, kind of just catching on with what the FDA was doing. I think you found the same thing in the EU, but what we're seeing now is individual countries are really taking their own look at these regulations, adopting some, rejecting others, changing others, and that again is just adding to some of the complexity facing brand owners trying to get the right message into the right market at the right time.
Oh, I can so agree to this one, especially because actually I'm located in Switzerland, in Zurich, and Swiss companies have a great brand recognition all over the world. But going globally with products from this region in here, you encounter so many different things you really need to make sure. And we're not only talking about just bringing information to labels or to packages. I mean, today we are really talking about a future which is going fully digital on all of these steps, yes?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And if you kind of look at the opposite end of the spectrum, you can see the same problem cropping up. So I was at a GS1 conference in Las Vegas last summer, and there were people that had as few as 10 or 15 SKUs, and all they were trying to do was just project the right data to sell their product on a couple different retail channels. And they were having trouble just with their few number of SKUs getting their marketing message, their why-buy statements, their product photography, their 3D lined up for that. So projecting out from the product and what I'm trying to say, and then, Frank, mapping it back to all these complexities we mentioned at more of a global multinational level, you can get an idea for the problem that I think a lot of the people on the call today might either be have an ankle deep into, or maybe they're neck deep in these issues.
And that sounds fantastic. One point in there is, I mean, you mentioned that to be a problem. Us as solution vendors, I would say we keep that up and take that as a challenge, yes? So really trying to apply the scientific part of my brain into all of that, I see something resembling what I would call the digital twin for all of this. If you remember the past about all of the different tools and platforms that we had for artwork development. I mean, it all started with desktop publishing. You mentioned the Macintosh platform before. So I would say computers, right from the very beginning, have always been applied to artwork. So it was everywhere. And people got really used to launch applications like InDesign and Illustrator and create a complete virtual representation of what was later on printed. So I would say the digital representation, the virtualization of artwork, that was really there from the very beginning.
That's right. I don't know if you remember the term. It's not as common now, but when the Mac first came out, a big feature was something called Wysiwyg. What you see is what you get. And the idea was that the computer should be able to represent the end product, if that was a physical magazine or piece of copy, in such a way that you could make decisions in the digital environment and then have the confidence those decisions would carry over faithfully to the physical product. And I think that dovetails right back into what you just said, Frank. We need that visual guidance and that virtual guidance to get the real world right.
I remember that part very, very well, especially all those discussions in between the different platforms, who actually had the better what you see is what you get.
Yeah, who is the whizziest, wiggiest.
True. So in there, what I kind of missed all the time, having been in that space and today working with large enterprise applications, if I look at the functionality and all the features today's applications offer, it's tremendous. I mean, I still use Photoshop on a very regular basis for my photography, but really going to Illustrator or InDesign, it's overwhelming. But what I totally miss is kind of a common platform that really brings the information together for all of those people. If I look at the challenges today's designers have, I mean, they start with brand standards. They have to collect so many information to make sure that the brand recognition is right on the spot. They have to collaborate with a large amount of people internally, be it technical people providing specifications, marketing people that give the latest claims, and legal making sure that what you print to the package actually is not harming anybody. We move to concepts, layouts. We go to all the different challenges of localization, design, the visualization, the proofing part, absolutely to make sure that everything is right. And on top of all of that, we're really working on change management, because I know from very, very precise experience working in a print shop, the last person to get the information that some data was changed is the actual poor design guy that has to somehow bring that in the last minute, yes?
That's right. That's right. And a few things happen if the design is changed late in the cycle. Often the original concept holder may not get the updated file in some of today's workflows. Really, what we see here is there's a life cycle notion. I think more particularly with packaging than maybe any of the other traditional print graphic arts, and that many product label changes and package changes are the industry term is a pickup. They take an older version of something they've already done very successfully and make relatively minor to moderate modifications to it. And the key to that working smoothly is making sure that when I pick that used asset up, I understand it, I understand the data around it, who approved it, when it was approved, and then I'm careful to only make the changes that I intend to make as I go through the process of touching all these parts that you've shown here, Frank. I think the other part is technology helping bridge the disciplines. So you have structural engineers that work with concept people up front. That tends to move into a tighter grouping of concepts into production art, and then as you mentioned, over into pre-media and print. And all the while, I think the supply chain and the creative chain there is really looking to work together so that the person in the concepting can have some dialogue maybe with somebody towards the back end and try to get mistakes and data correct up front.
Absolutely fascinating. I mean, this is really appealing for me. I fully believe that with all those challenges, with all those people that need to bring information during all of that process, we really need to have a good solution that considers not just one of those steps or a few of those steps. We need to bring something that brings everything together. We actually at Siemens, we call that a realization of the digital enterprise, because all of those steps are part of a large process group, and we have a lot of interaction of information. Everybody really benefits from having a single source of information that can bring that information to those people, and I believe there is even a greater message behind all of that. If we really think how dependent designers today are on information coming from the outside, I can immediately see that with package design providing a die line for the exact dimensions for a label, or from the formulated design aspect, they would require the latest and greatest on package specifications for the materials being used, for ingredient lists, nutrition fact lists.
Right.
I mean, there's so much information coming into designers.
That's right. I think as I've worked with many of those designers, one of the great frustrations that they would have is working with dummy copy and then eventually getting some copy, but really not being sure that all of the data they were getting was accurate. Sometimes it's a matter of length of data and trying to make a design when you don't know, am I going to get 3 words or 5 words or 12 words, or what's going to come my way so that I can make the design aesthetically pleasing. And then of course there's just the general notion of accuracy and communication across the entire span of the package. If I've got a marketing statement on the back, does it actually fit the messaging or the graphics or the feel and flavor of the front panel? All of those things come into play, and getting that data accurate and right into the workflow cycle early on, I think helps both the creative folks as well as those people that are working more on the print and engineering side of the workflow.
I get that. I really get that. I mean, the challenge in here is with the faster time to market, with those challenges mentioned before, we have to be precise in all of that. Yes, we can't do any kind of failure. I mean, bringing product to the market, damaging your brand just because you just didn't get any kind of information wrong, and you might get it wrong just because you didn't collaborate with those people, you didn't exchange that information, you didn't get the latest upgrades. There is some certain risk inside, yes.
Yeah, and let's take it back to the challenge that you gave us, Frank. We know that many times the intention is right in these different groups, but they're looking for a tool that brings these things together. And in fact, that goes really to the core of why Siemens and Blue are here together. We've seen an opportunity from our end, managing artwork for a long time, to partner with a group that really understood metadata and PLM. And Frank, the first time we met, and I sat with you for a half hour, 45 minutes, and started understanding your data structures and attributing, and this is going back some years now, I was really excited because I saw the opportunity for meeting the challenges that we're putting forth.
It was a pretty good meeting. I remember that very well as well. That was definitely fun. I mean, just to probably give some of those insights to the audience, what fun we had and what we talked about.
Yeah.
The information really inside of a PLM system is not just about the package design process or the formulated design process providing input to the artwork development process. I mean, PLM is so much more than just those pieces. So what we essentially do, and what we talked about during that meeting, was that once we define a product with its brand structure, with its product variations, the SKU and everything, we can actually provide like a digital thread to all those specification components. So at every point in time, I can trace the package to the correct product, see what artwork has been generated for that one and what status that has. I can actually go inside and check the actual due dates when manufacturing processes plan to be started, in which plans the product needs to be printed. So all of that information is really one holistic big picture and connected everywhere.
That's right. I think there's one more thing to maybe call out there, and that's a terminology change that we use. I know I'm pretty sure it'd be the same in German, Frank, and that's the use of the word product. So in PLM, product lifecycle management, to some folks, product means what's in the container, the cereal in the box, the toothpaste in the tube, the vitamin water in the bottle. And of course, there are many disciplines around that, formulation and others. But then as that comes together, the product to a different group starts to be the box that I buy on the shelf, the SKU, the G10, the thing that I put in my shopping cart. And then to even another group, if you extend that, you're putting 6 or 12 into a case, and to some folks, the product is 9 cases sitting on a pallet moving around on a forklift. So I think it's important as we discuss these topics with each other in the industry that we pause for a moment when we're saying product to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
That sounds great. I mean, just thinking about all the complexity of the different aspects of what a product actually is to people, and artwork people really having to put everything together in the end and provide those compelling imagery, those things that make the consumer not only look at that, but buy it, yes?
That's right.
Great. Well, we've talked a little bit about that digital twin, the digital enterprise, and the digital thread. Maybe we should show a little bit about how easy all that information is to be accessed. I mean, what I would like to present now is a little bit how I use that brand hierarchy for a product to identify digital assets, how I can reuse them. So let me show a little bit of a demonstration in here for that specific piece. In this video, I'm going to check brand standards for the new design I'm going to create. So this design belongs to the brand of the Siemens Energizers, and the Siemens Energizers brand is part of the general Siemens brand equity. This brand equity has a number of standard assets that are connected on that level. One example is the Siemens Ingenuity for Life logo. So going to this logo, I can find all the relevant high-resolution imagery for that specific brand asset, and I also can find the defining information in regards to how this logo is intended to be used. So connected to the logo, we find the how-to guidelines document. In a preview in here, I can see very, very easily after just a few clicks the precise instructions on how that claim is going to be used inside of collateral. So, like in a browser, after consuming that information, I can go back to my specific logo, can check the workflow when this logo was being released and who released that information, and I can also check where the logo is already in use currently. So I find it was used in 2 different layouts and 1 design. So I'm interested in how that was used in a specific design. In the preview I can immediately see that this logo is part of that design, but the bill of digital assets really gives me precise information that this actually is part of specific design. Going back to the Siemens brand, going back to the Siemens Energizers brand equity, I find additional standards for that brand hierarchy. For convenience reasons, all the parent assets are actually listed on the very same page for that specific sub-brand. So the sub-brand in here has a couple of standardized layouts. So the Energizer standard layout, as well including the Siemens brand logo again, has an Adobe Illustrator file and could have other files in here, but what's important for me, it has a PDF file, a neutral format that I can use for high resolution visualization of the information I need to see. Again, that layout I would like to check whether it was used in some kind of specific artwork process, and indeed it's being used for the creation of the orange mango protein smoothie label artwork, which is currently in the layout phase. So going over to that specific artwork, again for convenience reason, I have a very nice table that shows me all the assets that are used for the brand that specific product was created for. With the many connections the Siemens logo has, the relation browser is a very powerful tool to actually analyze where that specific logo was being used. All right. After that small little introduction, I mean, essentially the process, how we understand it in that industry, it really starts from my side as having a completely new and exciting meaning for the actual layouting. So as you have seen, we can actually manage all the individual digital assets where they have been used, put them into illustrations and designs. But the big part in there is, imagine we really revamped the old layout process, which was a little bit sleepy in the last years. And we go ahead and instead of just taking a layout with some frames, we could actually have a standard layout per brand standard, and put in a complete list or bill of digital assets into that already that would automatically make us all reuse those assets. I mean, that should be a pretty good opportunity for reuse, for shortening the life cycles, and generally lessening efforts, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I think when we started talking about the data and whether that data is held in the formulation or other parts of the PLM tool or even other attribute systems, the mapping of those into these die lines and kind of the tagging is something a lot of other industries have gone through in some different ways. And it's very exciting about how that alignment can bring some automation and accuracy. And from a design and creative perspective, giving designers and creatives more time to actually do what they love, which is come up with great ideas and concepts, and maybe spending a little less time tweaking or checking for accuracy as they go through that process.
I can totally relate to that. I mean, when I worked in a print shop, I was actually responsible to generate the production artwork from the designs, and I can absolutely tell you, most of the times we looked at what we received, we laughed a little bit, and then we did it again. Right. So, I mean, today we don't have that opportunity anymore. Yes, the quality might not be there, but having a good, compelling, high-quality production artwork based on the designs and all that work, if we don't reuse, if we don't set standards right away during that process, we will not be able to match the needs in this industry to produce compelling artwork in that fast way we have to do it today.
That's right, and I think collaboration, that word is used by a lot of people in some different ways. I think the key there is some fidelity so that you can collaborate in different ways. That might mean people looking at the same file at the same time and commenting on it. That might mean one person at 11 at night because that's when their kids go to sleep, and the next person's up in the morning early, and they're seeing each other's notes and understanding what each other are saying, and that there's some richness to the communication tool. It's not simply a bunch of sticky notes, but there's some threaded discussion, there's some organization, maybe a legal can distinguish comment from marketing versus comment from quality, etc. The fidelity of the collaboration has become as important as the fact of collaboration itself.
I so agree to this one. I mean, after having worked in that domain, and I know that sometimes means you work day and night, you get kind of a little bit blind against all of that detailed data you have to work with. Yeah, so the small things, if you don't get the experts online that help you in the proofing process, making sure that all the details are right before you go to print, I would love to have a tool available back then when I did it, but today I'm pretty proud that we have one.
That's right. I think it's kind of like the analogy of the 7 blind men describing the elephant. You know, each holding a different part of it, from the trunk to the tail to the legs, etc. That to a designer, if they do a design and it looks great and it's approved and it gets the brand excited and they do it in 7 colors and the printer knows that it's a 6-color press, to the printer that's almost the end of the world, that they got to recolor break it and call pre-media. But the designer, they know the essence, very hopefully the essence of their design is going to come through. I think bringing these channels together and having one party understand why it's important to the other is all part of that process.
Oh, it is, and believe me, having worked on that presentation with you, I actually must confess, when I looked at all the material at the proofing, which we'll go to present in a minute, I actually have seen that the layering structure I did for the color separation didn't include my spot colors in the design. Shame on me. But this is what happens when you don't do proper proofing before everything goes to print, yes?
That's right. The color breaks and the print ink densities and things are really important to the back end of the process. Another need of the tool, though, is to not crush people in the front of the process with a bunch of tools and palettes and widgets that they don't need. So I think part of the idea of that flexibility and fidelity is presenting the right tools to the right people in the workflow at the right time.
Smooth. That's definitely nice. I mean, would it be possible we have a quick introduction to that tool as well, Steve?
Sure. I think a couple things that we have already hit here from a workflow and solution specifics areas is the idea that you can work in real time, that we can give tools by user. We'll look at some barcode inspection here in a moment in the video and some other tools. And this isn't meant to be exhaustive by any means, but just to give the audience a little bit of a flavor that once the artwork passes into this collaborative environment, be it creative work, production art, or final press-ready files, that the tools that they need are there. So yeah, we can proceed on to that next slide and into the video.
Hi, my name is Stephen Kaufman. I'm the Chief Product Officer for Blue Software. What I'd like to demonstrate for you in a brief video are the capabilities of the advanced proofing module that Blue Software has worked with its partner Siemens PLM to put the strength of the two products together. What I've got here is an item that I've created in Teamcenter, and under this particular container I've got 4 files. I'd like to look at the 4 files and inspect them more closely, so I'm going to go over and choose my Advanced Proofing Module button. And what that does is it takes the 4 files and renders them to my screen. So just to show you what I've got a Revision A, an artwork label, probably done at a creative agency. I've got a B revision to that label. I also have the production artwork for both version A and version B. The first thing to look at is just the ability to inspect the artwork, and I have some tools, most notably the ability to quickly zoom in on a particular piece of art. Each click takes me in more deeply. This took me all the way up to 6,400%, but typically I might want to do something like this, just zoom into this protein smoothie area. And I'm going to do a type inspection. So I've got a type inspection tool. When I click, I can see that this is Siemens sans block, the font size, and even the text that I selected. I can also zoom back and use some of the other inspection tools. I've got the ability, for example, to inspect the barcode. So I'm going to draw a marquee around the barcode, and that tells me the type of barcode, the value in the barcode, and the height and the width. You might also notice that somebody's been here before me and has left some notes, so the notes can be expanded. I've got the ability to do different types of notes, square, circular, freehand drawing. In this case on note 3, somebody circled this area and they've actually created a little mini thread. So a person said lower this by 1/4 inch, somebody says legal says we can't, marking says we must. Often there is, let's say, dialogue between different groups who are stakeholders to the art, and they may not always agree. This advanced proofing area is a place where we can work some of these details out and get the right expertise and an agreement on how to move forward with the artwork. There's also a very important part of the tool, which is being able to look at the color separations on the left. This would be particularly important to folks in the pre-media part of the workflow. And I might take that moment to mention that all of the buttons that I have across the top can be given to certain users and not given to others. So for example, if I've got a lawyer who's reviewing the copy for regulatory compliance or legal issues, they may not want to see this inspection tool and separations, etc. There's a high degree of flexibility to what tools we show to which rules and which users. But in this case, I've got most of my tools showing, and I'm going to use the ink density tool. And when I select a particular area, it shows me the ink density at different areas, and it will also give me a Pantone as well as process color readouts. So I've got that note. I can even pin the note, and it can become an annotation. And each time I do anything in the system, it's creating an audit trail for me of the date, the time, the end user, and as you can see here, each annotation can have a different color. So I could have a color for legal, a color for marketing, a color for different groups. There are some other tools. I won't go into detail, but there's measuring tools, rotation tools. The system is quite responsive, so you can see I rotated it 90 degrees 4 times quite quickly. But one of the other things we wanted to show is just a high-level overview of the capability of the tool is the ability to compare two versions. So I'm going to choose this compare view up here, and this takes two pieces of art and overlays them. And so what I've got here is I've got my revision A, and I'm comparing it to my revision B. So let me zoom in a little bit, and let's look at the difference between the two. You might notice the bright green color, and that's showing you the differences between the two. What I can do is slide from one version, so this is Rev A, and then I can pan across, and now this is Rev B. So what I see is they've updated the nutrition facts panel to comply with the newest regulation. When I hover in the middle, this is when I get that green view of the differences between the two. If I look a little bit lower, I'll also notice that there's some green in the barcode. This is telling me the barcode has changed between version 1 and version 2. And as I use the slider with the first one, I can do that here. So I see this barcode ended in 36, and it was altered to 43. I can also notably compare the production art, the creative art here with the production art. And one of the challenges with that workflow is that the artboard size is often different. So you see this creates initially confusion because I got a lot of differences because I have two completely different size artboards. Here's the creative artboard, but then this is the pre-media artboard. But in order to address that situation, we have the ability to use an auto alignment tool. So what I can do is zoom in on a part of the art here, and I'm going to go to auto alignment, and I'm going to pick one part of the first and then one part of the second. That takes those 2 points and aligns them together so that now the art is oriented even though the artboard size is different. And so let's zoom back now, and we'll see I've got a nice overlap between the two. I can see the two, and I can compare. Now what I can see is that even though the artboard is different, the art itself is quite the same, and of course it often should be. And if I zoom in, I can just get a tighter view of the same. So again, this is just a very high-level overview of some of the inspection tools and the ability to compare one version to another, and even to compare across versions when major elements like the artboard size has changed.
Thank you. Okay, I think we broke off on the end there. The last part that we didn't show was where you can take two different pieces of art and compare them. This gets very important when you have different size artboards. So often the creative process, the artboard is about the rough size of the label or the art. Later, as pre-media and print comes in, they start adding printer marks, color bars, and that changes the artboard size. But the important thing is that you still want to be able to compare throughout the process, that early creative rendition, the production art, and then maybe even the final file across that. Does that make sense, Frank?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, this is one of the biggest requests we had with all the change going on in companies on that large scale like we discussed. Comparing those fine little details is so essential. I really believe that's going to be a major, major thing for all of the artwork industry to be really part of that digital enterprise and make sure that you only not only have all the tools you need and the features you need, but you have access to collaboration, to the single source of information, get the latest and greatest on specifications. I mean, if you just think about what we talked about today, is really a full digital enterprise, the complete holistic big picture, breaking down into individual details about barcodes and fonts and color definitions within the artwork. I mean, I fully believe no other vendor has such a large portfolio that can really span from the large part to the very small part.
Yeah, that's right. And like we said earlier, it's not just tools and functionality, but the understanding of the people building the software as to what the problem is and the ability to cross disciplines with a single tool.
I believe this is what happens when you put two people like you and me into one room and we really try to combine science and artwork, yes? So the overall picture, I would say that's a pretty good match. I feel very good with the structure we bring, with all the information components we have, with the business process being supported. I mean, this is really enabling artwork people to get creative, really concentrate on compelling imagery, on doing what they love to do, and not just, try to find the latest and greatest of information.
That's right, and doing so all the while keeping quality and the idea that recalls are not only undesirable, but they're basically unthinkable to large CPGs. So, but making sure that the fabric is in place, that safety net is in place through the process, and then providing the people, the actors in the workflow with the flexibility to do what they need to do and hopefully do what they love to do. With that, I guess we can segue and make it a little more interactive, and I believe we'll be taking some questions. Let's see if we can get a couple people in the audience to tell us what they think.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Frank, for that presentation. I really feel like you illustrated how you can take such an incredibly complex process and help to simplify it through your very simplified explanation of the process in the presentation. So I appreciate that. We do have time for some questions, and we have some in already. If you haven't submitted a question yet, please feel free to do so now. And the first question here, I think, would be for Frank. It's what depth of information becomes available to the designers with a merged platform for PLM and artwork development?
Now that's probably one of the key aspects in here. We are not stopping on the boundary of just managing information only for artwork. We go all the way to all the details. So just like you have seen that we have the bill of digital assets for artwork, we have the very same formulated aspects breaking down into the individual material specifications for the ingredients. We can do the very same for the package, all the CAD-related aspects. We can go to the line, the plant. So all details, all that information is part of that large digital twin for the digital enterprise.
Okay, we have another one here. For Stephen, I believe, do you typically see the PLM tool and the labeling workflow working together, and what are some of the driving forces there?
Yeah, so I think it's somewhat of a newer concept. I think people have always known on both ends, both the package attributing and PLM side as well as the creative side, that there was potential there. I believe that even at a few years ago at a user conference, we did a live demonstration where we integrated some PLM data into the artwork, and there was interest and some excitement, and some people came up after the demonstration and asked questions about it. I think what's changing now is especially the push to get e-commerce data out so quickly, sometimes either at the same time or even before the physical product is generated, that it's driving broader groups in brand organizations to ask these questions and to invest thought, research, and discussion and investment into solving that problem, doing that integration for real, instead of saying, well, wouldn't that be nice or wouldn't that be fantastic, if we're now seeing clients adopt it and get excited about how it could change really the way they bring some of their product and product data to market.
And is there just also a greater sense of urgency at companies now that, oh my gosh, things are changing so rapidly, we have to do this now, even though we've been saying that we've wanted to do it for the last 10 years or whatever the case may be? Are companies really ready now more than before to say, let's do this?
Yeah, I'm interested in Frank's opinion on that. I think there is a carrot and a stick, right? The stick is owning a brand and seeing a poor image that maybe a blogger took on the kitchen table instead of the one that you spent time curating and building, or going onto two sites on the same product and seeing different data and figuring out, well, where did that happen? How did that happen? Or maybe worse, having somebody like an EVP or even a C-level executive ask that question. That's uncomfortable. That's the stick. The carrot is the excitement of getting your information out about your new product or your brand into market at the same time or even before consumers can buy it, and generating excitement with rich data. Consumers want data now. It's not just about brand loyalty. It's about data. What are your thoughts, Frank?
I fully agree. What we currently see in the market with all the pressure on companies, there's a lot of competition out there, especially with the largest being, really chased by smaller and medium-sized companies that can react to the market way faster. We see demand, a lot of demand, and the challenge is getting more difficult, and the time you have is getting less. So I would actually say the opportunity is right now. PLM is very mature. We have great technology in here. Artwork definitely has the need to really benefit from all what PLM can bring to the table as well. Now is the time.
Great. Another question, is the artwork created by the software using formulas, rules, and standards, or is the artwork imported to the PLM from, for example, Adobe?
So I think the answer to that is both, and Frank, I'll give you a chance on this. There are cases where packages and packaging artwork can be highly automated, and Siemens has some very strong solutions in that area as well. I think we've worked with a mutual client on solving those issues. I think part of the balance is making sure that a client is not forced into an all or none scenario. So there are opportunities. I think we did an analysis for one client and found that their package had 165 different data elements on it, but they were only interested for various reasons in automating about 90 of them. So those 90 were automated onto the artwork, but then the other ones, again, for reasons particular that brand and the creative cycle, were left to manage in a more traditional fashion. If you kind of try to boil the ocean by going from 0 automation to 100% automation, it can be very challenging to everybody in the process. And again, Frank, I'll turn that over to you. I know this is an area you're really passionate about.
Oh yeah. So the point in here probably is, we like to leave the work to the expert platform. Yes, so if I want to create an illustration, a design, a layout, anything like that, it's really what you do inside of the Adobe application. So within Illustrator, you have a lot of different capabilities to really make sure you get a very well-looking design. What you're being challenged with usually is finding all the formulations, all the nutrition fact lists, all the details of your specifications to be put on. So what we did essentially is we combined the best of both worlds. So for the Adobe files, what we are being able to do is we can connect those files with content coming from our digital asset libraries, really saying that we maintain the revision of the content, and once something is to be updated because the specification changed, this becomes available within that bill of digital assets inside of Adobe directly. So you get really a notification saying we got an update on some of your information. You open that artwork in Adobe, both in InDesign and Illustrator. You check what's necessary to be updated and just put it in right from that client integration. So it's really a seamless way to work in your authoring application inside of a PLM environment.
That's right, and I think another point there is trying to maintain editability all the way to the back end of the process. There are some tools that may help in automation, but they start to build a proprietary PDF format. PDFs are not all created equal. There are open PDFs, and there are PDFs that have a lot of proprietary data embedded. So we prefer tools that maintain the editability. Typically, those might be a high-resolution X4A or other open PDFs, all the way until they're at the printer and the printer's ready to do separations and make plates or go to digital press.
Yeah, so essentially we are really making sure that whatever is inside of artwork can be updated to the very last minute with total reliable information from that source directly with all the people collaborating.
Okay, we've got another one here, I think for Frank as well. Can we use other capabilities typically found in PLM, like classification, program management, that kind of thing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to be crystal clear in here, to us, artwork development in our platform is not just a loosely connected entity which we lightly integrated. We made that really part of our heart and core. So, and having done so, it's very important to say in here that we can really leverage everything we have. I mean, we have so many capabilities. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to do it all at once. You can take a step-by-step process and, you know, have a good-phased approach in here. But the road is very long. If you have needs somewhere, just leverage what you have.
Okay, another question. What is the relationship between the software interface that was demonstrated and the Teamcenter?
That's an interesting question because the user interface demonstrated is Teamcenter. So especially the first movie and the beginning of the second movie, what we showed is called the new interface of Teamcenter called Active Workspace. It's a completely HTML5 based client that you can access from any device. And from within that client, we can actually launch applications. So vProof, the Teamcenter Advanced Proofing component in the second movie, has been launched directly from within that interface. And because it's also completely HTML5 based and web enabled, I mean, you can go with any client you like, go to Active Workspace, work in that environment, do the proofing, and all part of the same story.
Maybe another point there in terms of the integration is that the file delivery is completely controlled by Teamcenter. That goes from a security perspective, a workflow integrity perspective, and an auditing perspective. So even though we were looking at the file in the web browser, that's just a pixel rendition in a web browser. The real file, the intellectual property, and even the ability to reproduce or replicate is all stored securely on the back end and just projected to the UI to the front. So in the case of the demonstration we saw, I wouldn't be able to download that and load it into Illustrator. I couldn't really do anything with it from a high resolution perspective. And security and auditability are equally important to many roles at the brand as are creative flexibility and speed to market.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really important to underline that with those clients, we can really leverage the full breadth of the access control mechanisms we have inside of the collaboration platform. We can really make all of that accessible in a controlled way while being secure and protecting your intellectual property.
Great. One more, I think for Stephen. When you say you can review artwork, specifically, what do you mean? Creative, production, pre-media files, press-ready files?
Yeah, I think that kind of goes back to that same comment I was making about the word product, is that artwork, is defined often by the way that people utilize it in a workflow. In terms of the tool itself, we see people using the vProof technology in these workflows like the one we show with Siemens, where there might be creative collaboration up front, multiple ideas being looked at, an A, a B, a C, and a D design. They're not really necessarily locking down copy. There might be Greek, and we would look at that as a creative endeavor almost purely. That can then migrate into locking down that singular idea and going through the process Frank mentioned that he was involved in, production artwork, where I'm now starting to nip and tuck my design. I'm not really in a full-on creative process, although I might be making some very small changes. And then we can carry the tool through all the way to the high-resolution printable file that literally is delivered to the printer, and as I mentioned earlier, can create plates for printing or can drive a digital press like an HP Indigo or other presses. So the tool is flexible in that it can cover the entire span of those processes and get people in any of those roles working with folks in the other roles.
Great. Just for comparison purposes, what's out there in the industry? Are there a lot of consumer goods companies that have this level of process alignment, or even heading toward this, or is this still a relatively new concept?
Frank, you want to take that one?
That's actually a pretty good question. I mean, we are pretty well with the functionality we offer, and we are not afraid to enter that market in here as well. So we're pretty sure we are competitive in here with our offering. What companies do today is, well, they look at the market, they feel the need, and sometimes they don't move in the way they should. It's kind of bridging the gap in here, and I fully believe that events like this today should show to the greater audience that we are there, we can do it, and it's just a matter of getting in contact with us and going ahead.
That's right. I think these ideas are really baked together, and we understand them very well, and we have some very large customers that have done thousands and thousands of packages. In fact, if you go shopping in the store, you will no doubt walk by many packages that are highly automated and some fully automated in this fashion. I think what's a little bit newer maybe is trying to extend that all the way downstream so that the data that is building the package in the print spectrum is also the exact same data that's being projected into various social and e-commerce purchasing experiences. But that also is a driver and creating some urgency in the market. There's not a great deal of technology transformation to get there. There is a willingness to really look at how these processes could benefit your companies and how to build a business case for executives that really need to understand not just the technology and the workflow, but the dollars and cents in their return.
And the understanding that any kind of mistake in the process can get out there and have a direct impact, right?
That's right.
Okay, I think that's just about all the time we have today. So we'll wrap things up. If we didn't get to your question, I apologize, but like I said, someone will follow up with you after the presentation ends. I'd like to again thank our speakers, Stephen Kaufmann of Blue Software and Frank Brandau of Siemens, for giving us their insights today. I'd also like to again thank Siemens for being the sponsor of today's webinar. Finally, I'd like to thank all of you out there in the audience for devoting some of your very valuable time to being with us today as well. Remember that the webinar is going to be available very shortly on demand, so you can come back and listen to it again and share it with anyone in your organization or outside your organization that you think would find some value in it. So that does it for today. Again, thank you for all of our participants. Have a great day, and we hope to see or hear you, as the case may be, back here again very soon. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.